to the Athletes in Motion podcast, From Race to Recovery, with your hosts, Tom Riegel and Kenny Bailey.
Hey, Kenny, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Tom, how are you?
I'm fantastic as well. I'd like to welcome Stacey Daniels to the show today. Thank you for coming on, Stacey. We're super excited. Owner and founder of SD Performance. We're going to talk about coaching, but coaching youth athletes.
Yeah.
And this is going to be interesting because it's a topic we really haven't covered much. And we want to dive into that a bit because we think there's a lot to this, especially this time of year. As we get into summer, this is right towards, this will be coming up in a couple of weeks, but this is all good. So Stacey, tell us about yourself. How'd you get into coaching? What's your background? Give us a little background.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Sure.
This is a great opportunity to just kind of be open and talk and hang out for a little bit. But my background is very lengthy. First of all, I grew up playing sports, loved playing sports as a kid. That was kind of my thing. My family really revolved around sports. So if you can picture any summer picnic, any hangout was all the things. And I would say it was little to a lot competitive in a lot of instances.
Just a little?
Just a little.
Big family?
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I'm the middle.
Okay.
So I have two brothers. So I have one older, one younger. I'm the middle child. We're all 2 years apart.
Okay.
So a lot of things went on.
So you got your butt kicked and you kicked butt on the same time.
Both.
Since being middle.
Pass
it down.
Yeah.
Pass it down.
We'll call competitive debating happen in our household.
There you go.
And a lot of instruction with some louder voices by our moms and dads to put us in place and keep us in place, which was nice.
Got it.
But anything from ping pong we grew up on to soccer, basketball in the backyard. We lived in the cul-de-sac, so I think it made it a little more competitive with all neighbors and hanging out and just doing things. We were just that active family.
Nice.
That just was always on the go. And it's very different in today's culture where I think kids aren't as active. They're doing different things. They're usually stuck behind like a phone or an iPod or something. But we were always out on the streets, kind of hanging out, just playing something, digging a hole, building
get
a
outside
fort.
and play.
Get outside and play, which is great.
So you didn't schedule play dates with your friends? You just sort of went out and hung out with your friends?
It was one of those back in the day where you go and knock on their door and say, hey, you want to come out and hang out? They were like, yeah, come on, let's go.
Yeah, our play dates were like basically whoever's mom bought groceries that day. Yeah. Sort of, that's the house we hung out at.
All the good snacks.
Dude,
And whoever
she got Doritos. Yeah.
Hey,
right.
is Stacey here? Can you come out and play?
Yeah, it was never BYOS. It was never bring your own snack.
Yeah,
you just go to their house and
Exactly.
you just eat their snacks,
Yes.
say thank you, leave, and then maybe come back the next day if they have you back. So
Exactly.
it's kind of one of those.
Love it.
But yeah, loved sports growing up. My big sport, I ended up playing soccer in college. I had to give up some other sports. So basketball was my second favorite. Loved basketball, but to that degree, I had to make sure that I was focusing on one and I was training well and being ready and at my optimum, at my best. So I did soccer in college. I was in Springfield College in Massachusetts.
Cool.
Grew up north in the cold weather. So it was like Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts. Got done with collegiate soccer. And within that was my major. So I majored in applied exercise science. Okay. So if you take all the sports, you break down those sports, and then you look at the origins and the backbones of it, like your anatomy, your physiology, your biomechanics. That is applied exercise science to a key. It's how do you look at sports and how do you break that down? How does it apply to the human body? And how can you increase performance in that set? So got done with collegiate soccer, had my major, and I was like, man, what do I do? What do I do now? And I was really blessed in the opportunity of training under Mike Boyle. I did an internship with him. So he is he's like one of the gurus of functional training, functional movement and functional training.
I have his book.
Yes,
I
exactly. Yeah. And it's probably a little bit of an old school book, right? Like he's still very relevant in today's time. But back then he was like the thing. And he worked with the Boston Bruins at that point in time.
Nice.
So I did internship with him and really just got into it and just got my feet, not my feet wet, like my whole body just soaked with what is the idea of performance? What does that look like? How should athletes be training? But more importantly, does age matter in athletes? So got done with him, did a quick internship. Then I was out and I was like, all right, here we go. What's the next step again? And I ended up going down to Florida to an academy called IMG Academy
in
Florida.
Absolutely.
So I spent a small stint down there for 11 years, which was absolutely incredible. That was everything. That was me just going full on in, eyes and ears to every single sport that was happening down there. So I was able to really get my perspective really fine-tuned about what and how do athletes train, but more importantly, is there a difference between how athletes train and then how professional athletes train? Which there's a big kind of break in that point. On that campus, there was professional athletes. So I worked with NFL athletes, NBA draft prep, Major League Soccer athletes, professional golf athletes. We were having a quick conversation before about pickleball, and we started talking about tennis, and you mentioned Ivan Lendl. So I grew up watching Ivan Lendl and Boris Becker and Pete Sampras and Anna Kournikova and the Williams sisters, all of that. Well, Ivan Lendl's daughter was down there.
Wow.
So I was like,
Nice.
all right, well, let me go watch her play tennis. So I looked around the courts and tried to find her and could not find her. She did not play tennis. She played golf.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, oh,
Check that out.
That's
Yeah.
a little switch.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking now in my brain, Ivan Lendl is a very serious dude, like
Yeah.
very disciplined, very dedicated.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, how did he not convince his daughter to do tennis?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to let your kids go in their own direction, not force them, because that just might be their thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, she ended up playing golf. She was a great golfer in that aspect. And just spending time with multiple athletes down there, I started to understand that professional athletes have this huge desire and dedication to their craft. And they're a very small percentage, like a 2.5% of millions of athletes down there that get into that field. And their dedication to their craft was so big, it made them what they are. So now these younger athletes are in the same exact space. And I was like, well, what are some of the commonalities between a professional and a younger athlete? And it's, they have to develop early, and they have to develop well, and they have to develop consistently. So for me, when I grew up, I did something I think that was outside the gate of sports, is I really didn't early specialize in sports. So when you early specialize in sports, you really focus on one sport. If you can focus on one sport today, that means that you may have a chance to be the best athlete. However, that's not really what research shows. Research shows that when you early specialize, you almost burn out a little bit. You get too invested in that sport. You really don't have any quote unquote cross training. Your body isn't aware of other sport personalities. It doesn't understand. If I'm a soccer player, I don't really understand how to rotate my upper body, how to integrate my spine, what happens in how I'm stabilizing my scapula, all these different things. So I played every single sport. So now I'm able to play a whole different sport. I went from basketball to soccer, and now I'm able to play pickleball because at a young age, I really understood everything that my body was capable of doing. Nowadays with kids, they're just focusing on one sport and they're going super heavy. And then there's that decision they have to make when it comes to high school after playing 10 to 12 years of sport. Do they want to move forward because they're talented enough or they have the motivation? And that's a hard choice.
Yeah.
Right? For me, it was I'm moving forward because I'm ready and I love it and I enjoy it. But kids, because they played it for so many years, they have to decide, do they want to move forward with it because they're burnt out, or they want to take a chance and really see what happens in that respect. So got through IMG, and I was like, all right, here's my next step again, after 11 years and just spending time with some really incredible athletes. My sport was soccer. So down there, my highlight was working with the under 17 national team. So
Nice.
Cool.
those
Very
are
cool.
the best athletes, best soccer athletes in the world at their age, but they start super young. So again, looking at development, they started at the age of 14. There was one that started at the age of 12. So if you think about it, if the best soccer players in the nation are coming together to train in a 2-year program, and they're 14 to 15 years old, but now there's a kid that comes in that's 12 years old, and he's ready enough to be able to train with these kids. So his name was Freddie Adu. I don't know if you guys are aware of that athlete.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Small little lefty, very quick, very fast, out of Philadelphia. And he stayed there for 2 years. And then after 2 years, he went pro at 14.
Wow.
Yes, which is like unheard of.
Yeah.
And he made a lot of money,
Yeah.
millions and millions of dollars. So
Yeah.
this 14-year-old making all this money, and just being exposed again to that concept of what does it take to be a younger athlete and move into the professional world? It takes a lot. It takes a lot, and it takes a big support group as well.
Huge support group
behind you, and the
That's
right
crazy.
people in the right spaces of how do I perform well? What does that include? Well, it includes recovery. It includes nutrition. It includes a mental specialist to really just break down situations and help you be able to problem solve in those areas. So I started to understand that it was more than development, but it was like a team of things around you, right? So it's like a tree, but there's all these fruit on the tree and these branches, and these branches are going to support the roots of that person in between. So got done with IMG and then decided to come down here to Tennessee. And when I came down here, it was very different. It wasn't a place that I necessarily wanted to be, but it was an opportunity that God kind of opened up those doors for me. And I was like, all right, let me try Tennessee. And came down here, absolutely loved it. And that's when I was able to start my brand, SD Performance1, and be in a really cool space of now bringing that mentality of professional athletes, bringing the mentality of a developing young athlete, and how do those two come together? And yes, I've had the opportunity to be able to train more pros while I was down here. For the first 2 years of soccer with USL, I was a sports performance coach for Nashville SC. Now they're in the MLS, and they're doing some really cool things, which is great. So again, I was able to apply my knowledge in that space. But really, my heart was after kids and young athletes. And my brain is really developing around preteens. So what type of training does it take for a preteen? How is that different than a middle school athlete, than a high school athlete, than a collegiate athlete? And now I have all my systems together and how I can train those athletes really, really well at a high level as if they were pros, but do it developmentally correct.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I told you it was
that's
lengthy.
A great journey.
I know.
I mean, it's just like I'm soaking in all the information. The fact
I've
that
got like 50 questions already kind of popping out.
Right.
So I think to start out with, so because you've had that exposure between pro players, collegiate players, and just like you said, you grew up in a cul-de-sac. You guys were doing everything. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is probably a great example. Right? He's playing baseball. He's making a ton of money doing football. Incredibly talented, but he's sidearming the football like a baseball, right? Because he learned how to do that. As kids, because of the pressure that what you just said, you see a 14-year-old making money, and there's pressure to, that Adam, my son was doing baseball, and he was getting pretty good at it, and then all of a sudden it's winter league, and all of a sudden it's pitching coaches and batting coaches and all that, with the pressure to be that good that fast, right? Because your competition is a 14-year-old that used to be a 17-year-old. Now they're 14 that are coming in. How do you balance, or how do you try to get those kids to try to do multiple sports when it appears as if you don't start focusing on one, you maybe get left behind? Or is that a misnomer that you're going to get left behind?
Yeah, it's definitely a misnomer. You're going to get left behind. There's so much research out there, so we have to be able to bring athletes into a space of proper education. I think that's our biggest point when we're in this performance field and this industry. The biggest thing that I think that is left out is what is the significance of the performance field. So really, if you look at any athlete, if any athlete in this age wants to survive, they have to do something outside of their sport from a performance standpoint. Working out, understanding their body, flexibility, mobility, speed, strength, agility, how to recover, how to eat, like all those things are going to come together because the athlete nowadays is moving way too fast. They're doing all these particulars. So I guess the misnomer is if you don't do anything performance nowadays, then you get left behind.
Yeah.
But it's not that you've grown up to be a younger athlete. Now you've excelled, but now you're at 17. You're not necessarily going to get left behind because those components are off. But it's the education piece, which is huge. For any young athlete, I would love to start an athlete at the age of 8 or 9. I think that's a sweet spot. And that's where we fall behind, I think, United States, is that our American culture is so based on go, competitive. Let me put my athlete in a microwave and they should be pro at 10 years old.
Yeah.
That is not true at all.
Yeah.
But it's, can I start them at 8 or 9? Because there's these windows of opportunity for every single athlete of multiple age groups.
Yeah.
That if we don't touch on those characteristics, and this is like Canadian research, so it's called long-term athletic development, or LTAD, is that every single age based on the centimeters that they're growing, or the weight that they're growing, or the limb length that's being sent out for them. Yeah. You have to focus on particular components. So for a young individual that's 8 or 9, you want to start to focus on coordination and balance. Yeah. When they get through their 8, their 9, their 10, and they're ready, now you start to focus on speed.
Got it.
When they get to 10, 11, and 12, now you start to focus on a little bit of integrative strength. Can you strengthen muscles? Can you put them in good postures? Could you put them in good forms? Mm-hmm. When they get a little bit older, then it's now you pull them into the whole paradigm. They have all their bases down. Now let's include some strength. Let's do power development. Let's do endurance. Let's do fitness. So all those pockets have to fit in. But if we're missing those pockets because they're focusing on their sport and they're not getting it, now you see in about 4 to 5 years, so they're 8, they get to 12 or 13. Now they go through these huge growth spurts. Their body can't withstand the impact. Mm. So now you're seeing these injuries chronic over time that are going to be hamstring strains, ankles, knees, low backs, spinal injuries, all these things that I think for us as young athletes, we never had.
No.
Yeah.
Right? So why is it now that these young athletes that are 10, 11, 12, and 13 experiencing these big injuries? Because the idea is competition. Competition drives volume. Competition drives intensity.
Yep.
Competition also drives emotional drain. And so when emotional drain happens, stress happens.
Yeah.
Right? So again, when we come back to recovery, our ability to recover is going to decrease stress. Yep. It's going to manipulate different hormonal sets, and it's going to put us in the best position to perform well at a higher level. So there's so many different components in it, but as long as you start an athlete younger nowadays and put them in the performance industry, I've seen a ton of success with my athletes in that period of time.
So
I was going to say, because it's almost like you're overdeveloping one part and not the whole thing. So if you build a foundation and you're slightly off, you're an inch off on one side or the other, as soon as you start building up, all of a sudden it's crooked, it's off. And if it's crooked and it's off, then it's not going to work. And the other thing, I just lost my thought, because there's so many things going on at once, is probably you're developing a more rounded athlete mentally. And it's almost like we're thinking more short term. I want my child to have success quickly as a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old, not thinking about how they're going to perform when they're 20, right? Not thinking about that. They're thinking that success early equates success later, when actually it doesn't. It actually could be very detrimental to that type of thing.
Well, the classic, to me, always the biggest question, because I know when my kids were like cross country, my oldest one was really getting good at cross country. Mm-hmm. Same thing. He was doing track in the spring, cross country in the fall, and he was constantly running. One thing about running, you run year round, right? Yeah. He got to his senior year and he's like, look, I can't do this anymore. I need a break, right? Yeah. I don't every Saturday at 6:00, I'm at a meet, or I'm doing, I want to be able to have a Saturday where I don't have to do anything. And so I guess you mentioned there's like sort of that 0.25% that has that drive. Mm-hmm. How as a parent, like how do I, should I at that moment say, hey, you need to push through, and I know you're feeling tired now. To me, how much is it the parent pushing that person to make sure they get that drive versus the child intrinsically wanting to do that? And when you see that parent doing it and that child is getting burned out, what's that red flag look like? I mean, how do you address that, I guess?
Yeah, so that's one that I see a ton when it comes to parents.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah,
and you got to educate the parents more than you have to educate the child.
You got D1 scholarships on the line, right?
Yeah,
right. Yeah. Well, and they're forcing that because they want them to be obviously the best individual athlete that they can be. However, they need another set of eyes. I think we're the other set of eyes to be able to evaluate and assess their kid. A lot of times their parents give me this full story. Hey, my athlete has done this, and this, and this. They've competed in these areas. They found a lot of success. However, they're not meeting the standards of the team and they're not getting enough playing time. What does that look like? So I have to go back and address and try to understand really the parent first. Yeah. And I have to understand what was their sport history. What did they do? Oh, yeah. What did they enjoy? Because if their sport didn't match up to their child's sport, then the expectations are way different. Yeah. If their child is doing baseball or soccer, but the parent has played football, those traditional values are going to bang heads because it's no longer about, hey, I need to drive, push through. It's I have to reset, take a step back, assess the situation, make sure that maybe the athlete isn't doing a couple different things. Is the athlete being challenged too much, or is the skill level not there? or is the competition too high at their level?
Yeah.
Those three have to kind of ping off of each other. If the competition is too high and they're not that skill level, frustration sets in.
Yeah.
So maybe now their kid isn't pushing the way that they need to because they're just not at that level. But the parent is like, hey, I've been there. I pushed through it. I'm in football. I'm in basketball. Like this is what I did as a young kid. Culture is very different now, right? We understand that athletes move and sway in different directions. So I always go back to the parent. I have that conversation with the parent. Hey, listen, let's take some time. Let's step back.
Yeah.
We're going to have to be really patient with this athlete. If the athlete's 10, 11, or 12, I have to give them a longer perspective view of, hey, we still have 5 to 6 years left. This is where we're going to get them at their peak. We're going to get them at their peak in 2 to 3 years. I promise you, if we follow these steps.
Yep.
So it's going to take a trusting of the process. It's going to take a trusting of the communication and relationship that we have.
Yeah.
And if any of those points kind of break off in between, then that's where the athlete dwindles. If the athlete stays in line and understands the mapping that they can do really well, they see a very, very bright future.
Yeah. And I think to your point, the tension happens when even 5 years ago, it used to be pushed through 6-7 days a week,
right?
No pain, no gain kind of stuff. And now we're trying to figure out that that's just not the case, right?
Most definitely.
Even in the same sport, right? It used to be, just concussion protocol alone, right? So the dad may have gone to football and it just had I had a stinger and that's all it was.
I just got my bell rung a couple of times.
I got my bell rung a couple times. Now the kid's
problem.
13, 14 years old, gets his bell rung, that's long-term effect, right? So that becomes interesting. When you're talking, it reminds me, I think it's Norway, and don't correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they were trying to figure out why they're producing more Olympic skiers. Yeah. And what they do is there's no competition until they're 13 or 14 years old.
That's so good.
At all. They just go ski, they go have fun, because they said at 12 years old, they may not be a slalom or a downhill skier, that they'll develop what they're going to develop when they're older, so they don't even do competition. They're not allowed to.
What they enjoy and what they physically are capable of kind of just blossoms, and then they go, oh wow, you'd be a perfect mogul skier, or you'd be perfect for this. And
I mean, have you had to have those tough love conversations with some of these guys, and what's that like? I mean, with the child or with maybe I'm having I know I'm probably applying a bad assumption to this, and I apologize, but I feel like sometimes just because of the pressure of, and especially like SEC is, get your kid into college and, make sure they get that scholarship and all that. And the parents want to be proud of them. And, this is what I did when I was, I played. Yeah. And the kid just may simply not like it, to your point. You're like, hey, my dad's one of the world's greatest tennis players. I don't like tennis, and they play golf, which is awesome. How do you break that to him? Or do you have to break that to him? And when you do, is it, anyway, that's.
Yeah, I do. And I've had a lot of those conversations, and the exact phrase that you said is tough love. Love is something that we really don't truly understand, but we have to be able to apply in situations, and it kind of comes back to communication. So there's been a lot of points where, I'm really good with seeing body language of athletes, because I've seen it at so many different levels. I've seen it with a young athlete that comes in that wants it, from a middle school developmental athlete that is just really hungry, to a pro athlete that doesn't want it. So, it exists everywhere, right? And it's what box you trying to fit yourself in. Are you a square in a circle? Are you a triangle in a square? Like what do you look like? So I really try to understand body language in the first initial visits. I try to be open to how the athlete is kind of moving in that space. I think we always have a cut and direct plan and a template, any coach, of what you want to do, but that needs to be moldable, because an athlete might not strive in places where you think, and maybe you're pushing them too hard at a pace. Maybe you have to slow them down, take a step back. So understanding that body language, and then as soon as I see that something's off, I'm having a conversation to try to figure out with the athlete what's going on. Do they have a bad day at school, right? Because that may affect everything that comes in the door. They might not be able to filter stress really, really well, and that might just be the component. After many times in sessions, and depending how the season's going, they may lose their competitive edge, right? And that's where the conversation now shifts from the athlete to the parent. And it's, hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is my assessment. I want to hear your perspective on what you see in your athlete, because if that perspective is the same, then hey, we're there. If not, and they're saying, oh, they're fine, they're good, let's push through it, that's when that tough love and honest conversation comes in. And I think that relationship with the parent is even more important than the athlete, because if they're a young athlete, everything the parent does at home is going to dictate how that athlete is going to perform in the future, all the way from conversations that they're going to have in the car before they even go, to conversations after, to, hey, why didn't you play well enough? Or that conversation needs to be, hey, I saw there were some things you didn't do well out there, right? It's just the lines of communication have to be open between the parent and the athlete. And if that drive isn't there, then they have to be open to their kid moving into a different space.
Yeah.
But I've also seen that tough love happen. The athlete doesn't want to play that sport, but then it's not necessarily their drive is off. It's they're going through maturity, development, maturation. Hormones are different. They're trying to fit into different friend circles. Schools change. Like, all these different factors come into play. But as a coach, if I don't identify those things, I can't create a solution to them. So it's really identifying the big problem. What is that problem? And then rerouting the conversation from the kid directly to the parent, and then bringing it back together and almost having like a sit down. Yeah. Like, this is what's going on. This is how we create a solution, and kind of let them talk through it, and then just manage the solution from there. And like I said, I've seen kids not want to play a sport 1 year, go through a change of school, change friend groups, come back, and then blossom in their sport. Nice. They just needed a period of time to just heal a little bit, relax, recover, and then get back to what they love doing.
They don't know how to process that stress. And we constantly talk about the body doesn't know the difference between physical stress and mental stress, right? It's just stress that's thrown on the body. So these kids don't know how to process the amount of information and garbage that's being thrown at them on a regular basis. So it's important for the parents and the coaches to guide them through how they process that, and being able to, I think that's amazing that you can read the athlete enough to know that we can steer them certain ways, and just gentle this way or just this side, and allow them to kind of process it through in a situation that won't burn them out or mess them up. Type of thing. That's amazing. I think that's a special talent.
And teachers and coaches and trainers, anybody that's dealing with middle school kids, bless you. I mean, I don't know how. I know I was a jerk in middle school, but just because you're going through hormonal changes, you're
there's so much going on that you have no idea what it is. As the kid, you don't know what you're going through. So to have the team around you that can actually kind of identify it, or at least see it when it's off, to kind of help guide you to process that is great.
And you mentioned you like to see these guys a little bit earlier, right? If you do get somebody that's like 14, 15 years old, and there's sort of the muscle memories already there on maybe a form or a habit that they probably shouldn't have. I'm assuming that's a little bit more difficult to break that down and kind of restructure that. Would that be a fair thing to say?
Yeah, most definitely. At that point, they're at a little biomechanical advantage, meaning I always explain it to them from a smartphone standpoint that we have a battery on our smartphone. When we recover, when we charge that battery, it comes up to 100% every single time. As I see them and they're moving and their body is doing different things, I'm able to give them like a percentage of an idea. Hey, listen, you're moving well. You're really competitive in your sport. You're successful. But listen, how much better can you be if we can fix these certain biomechanical deficiencies? Your body is at 70%. You have a 30% window to be better. What does that look like? So for them, it's a biomechanical assessment. I'm breaking down what's going on. Hey, listen, your knees are moving this way. Your toes are moving this way. From that point, I sit them down really quickly. This is the problem that we can fix. I need you to trigger point release this muscle. I need you to stretch this muscle. I need you to strengthen this small muscle. But here's how we fix it. It's going to be on you. You got to be accountable. I'm giving you the mapping. I'm giving you the recipe. Now you have to make sure that you do these things at home on your own. And that is the pro mentality and the pro concept. The best pros I know that have been successful over years, they have a routine, and they do this routine every single day, not before a game, but they do it before every single training and practice. Every single
Fundamentals.
Day. It is a daily, it's a wake up, lock in, do it. They have a band, they do this stretch, they do this exercise, and they're doing that on an everyday basis to be able to keep their body together and keep it solidified. So for that athlete now, it's the takeaway from, hey, I'm really fast, I'm really strong, I need better symmetry. And as soon as we can fix that symmetry, everything heightens really quickly.
Is there, so 10 years ago, you were doing this versus today, saying, we were talking about how CTE and other injuries are coming up. Is there something that you had to sort of re-educate yourself on over the last 10 years about just how the approach to kids and students is there a movement that Like, hey, before we used to do this and now we don't do that. Is there something that you had to sort of learn and understand?
Yeah. I would say the patience piece, most definitely. Okay. I think we talked about being competitive and moving forward. Based on the environment that I was in, it was at that time, the United States was kind of behind on sports a little bit to a degree. We weren't as polished. We weren't as knowledgeable as we needed to. So it was more about go.
More brute force it, right?
More brute force. Yeah. Now it's come back to more science and more technology and more research. And we have so many things available to us. So I think it's more of not just focusing on one area, but really hitting all the areas, hitting that holistic approach of, listen, nutrition is really that important.
Yeah.
Like, and you have to start it at a young athlete. Recovery and idea of what you're doing on a daily basis and understanding how much energy you have is so important. Water is so important. Touching on these little exercises as I'm seeing these athletes progress out and get into their early 10s and 11s, it's really interesting to see how much they do, how many sports they do, the stress they take as a young kid at school, but how their body is breaking down.
Yeah.
And if it's one thing that I've learned the most is young athletes still have to be able to focus on the little things. They still have to have like a routine.
Yeah.
And any parent back in the day would be like, oh, it's all right. My athlete doesn't need that. We're just going to do this, this, and this. But nowadays I've seen a trend in young athletes becoming injured and breaking down in certain places. So we need to make sure that we're literally hopping on a foam roll for 5 minutes, in the morning and hitting these particular areas, just to make sure their body's functioning correctly. Because I think the tie-in is with young athletes, because they have so many different variables in their life. They have at home, they have school, they have sports, they have friend group, they have competition. They still need to be their best in all those senses of the word. But one that kind of sticks out for me, I think that a lot of people neglect, is school. So if their body's not performing well in the field, they're probably not performing as well in school as well. So even just to get up in the morning and open up your body, become awake, and have your body start to communicate and be in tune, those habits that have been created on creating better body symmetry is going to flow into their school, which means now better habits of hydration will flow into school and eating patterns. And now all these things start to come together to create a more holistic athlete. So the puzzle is being put together at a younger age, whereas before it was about, hey, let's work hard in the one area of performance, which is physical performance. Yeah. Let's not really truly highlight all the other points. Let's lightly mention them. Yeah. And hey, you can take it on your own. I'm really seeing the trend of, if you want to be a great athlete, you have to focus on the whole approach.
Yeah, and I think the mental thing, what we see here is what we see, like, volleyball players going through 3-4 weeks in a row of tournament weekends, right? Yeah. They're just hitting it. And I think with what happens at the Olympics and what's happening at tennis, when you're seeing these young women, Simone having to just go, look, I need a mental break. Yeah. It seems like that we're just now hitting on the mental aspect of it more seriously, because it seems like, at least what I see, is those breaks are occurring because of injury, because of physical injury. Right. Susie's got, her ankle's hurting, so she has to bow out of the tournament. We really don't want to do that. I never at any point have I heard a parent or a child yet say, you know what, I'm just burned out and I don't want to go, because I just feel like there's just a lot of pressure. Like you said, I got exams coming up, or a friend group pressure, or, broke up with a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever, right? It's just, life is too stressful right now, right? Is that something that you see as a riser? How are you handling that sort of aspect? Is that something that you have to incorporate more so on the mental aspect? I'm assuming you're also you're not just a coach or a therapist. You play a lot of hats.
Kind of a therapist,
right? Yeah, so, no, most definitely mental health has been a topic that is really surfaced to a high degree. And like you said, our idea of being successful back in the day was really competing at a high level, but kind of pushing through it. If I want to be able to be the best, I need to be able to break through that brick wall. That was because I think there was less of a skill set. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, there's more of a skill set, but the idea of how much they need to do is still there. So it's like, it's that idea of you're working at a big corporation and you're working from 9 to 5. You have all these hours. What are you actually going to get accomplished in 9 to 5? You'll get a good amount accomplished, but there's these breaks that are in between. Yeah. Now you go into a private sector. Let's say you own your own business and you're on your own. Now you have a shortened day. You have 3 hours. How much are you going to get done in those 3 hours? If you're someone that's fully capable and very clever and brilliant in your craft, you can get almost more done in those 3 hours than someone who is sitting at a corporate job from a long extended period of time because of those breaks. The quality of your work in a shorter period of time is better. I think that's where we are now in this culture with sport. Not that I'm dedicating less time to my craft, but it's spread out in a way where I'm hitting 2 hours here. I'm doing a really good job, but it's thought out. I'm not ramming through a wall, but let me focus on one day. Let me focus on the periodization of a technical quality. Let me just focus on these components. Let me fine tune here.
Got it.
On another day, let me focus on another technical quality. I think before we were always hitting everything every single day. Now it's let me fine tune. I understand their skill set. I've done a good job of assessing who they are as an athlete. Now let's make them better, because the thing that sports performance coaches don't do well, or coaches don't identify, is if an athlete is really good, they're always focused on what are they not doing really well? What do they need improvement in? I think we miss what do they do really well? How can we add to that? How can we fine tune that quality? So from a mental health standpoint, I think that it's surfaced so big because you have these super talented athletes that are being pushed at this high level, and they're saying, we don't really need to be pushed at that level. We're still doing a really good job. And so from a coach's standpoint, it's almost like if you have an individual for a certain amount of time, you want to squeeze the most out of them. I think we're squeezing in the wrong places. And as we squeeze in the wrong places, we're squeezing and we're pushing and we're putting pressure on them. When we put pressure on them, they don't perform well. When they don't perform well, then that means that their body is breaking down. When their body breaks down, then that means they're more susceptible to injury. When they're susceptible to injury and they're still asked to push through, confidence drops. And when confidence drops, performance is over. So again, it's really not about the injury of the athlete. It's about the lack of confidence that has been ensued in their body. And nowadays, you look at any high professional sport, it's all about moments. If you cannot step into that moment, then that means that you've not succeeded in that moment. If you don't succeed in that moment, then you're not seen as being successful. And so
that's interesting. And I think what Simone did, and she broke this. I mean, to me, the most fascinating thing, it's like, she's on a balance beam, right? And she's like, I lost confidence that I can hit that. And it's like, and folks are like, oh, she just needs to push through. She could literally like break her neck if she doesn't nail it. And if she doesn't have the confidence, it was all about confidence, right? It's like, I'm too burned out. I lost that confidence to be able to hit that. And it's like, give her a break. I mean, it's like, how many medals do you need to win? Is it 15 before you get a break? I mean, it's like, is it 20? I mean, at what point? And I think it's kind of interesting, and I'm glad to see that you guys are looking at sort of that mental aspect, and you're kind of looking at how do we get more efficient in a short amount of time. So it's not just volume. So bodybuilders were right, by the way. So you just focus on leg day, and then you focus on arm day. So so the bodybuilders are all sitting back going, "Hey, welcome to us, baby. We've been doing this since '78.
Yeah, we've known this. We've known this forever.
Exactly. Like, welcome to our world. Darn bodybuilders.
One small concept that I think has arisen a ton, especially within my brand, is yes, you want to be able to be productive and push, but if you're not up to it and you can't perform that day, I think it's still important for you to be able to show up, but the coach needs to be aware of that and include active recovery. So active recovery is still your ability to be able to keep a consistent pattern. I'm still showing up on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But if your body is broken down and you're not your best, you're still going to come in, you're going to train Monday and Friday, but let's break it up in between on Wednesday and let's do an active recovery day. That's when we're focusing more on the mobility, the stretching. We're changing mentality. We're having fun. We're laughing. We're trying to change their idea of what they think working out is, but we're still attending to all their needs at the same exact point. So parents love their kids to go, 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 go. But then when I kind of educate them on active recovery, it's a split. Some parents can be like, yeah, that sounds great. Let me kid come in and let me make sure that I take care of his mobility needs. And all the other parents are like, we don't really need to work on, mobility and flexibility.
I mean, I'm paying you to put her on a foam roller. She can do that at home. That kind of thing. It's like
exactly.
Not the point that she needs to show up because that's consistent, right?
Most definitely. And it's funny. And it's also a mapping for me to show the athlete and the parents what they should be going through on their own. So that over a week, over a month, they're still creating improvement on their own, which is great.
So let's talk a little bit about sort of as a parent when you think you want to make that step, right? You're like, hey, I think I want to hire a performance coach. I think Becky's at a point where she needs a little bit of help. What, you're clearly at the top of your game. What should parents look for? What should parents, are there good things and what are the red flags that parents should be looking out for when they start to look at a coach?
Yeah. So I think a great analogy is, if you just had a couple kids, or you have a couple kids in your family, and you're someone that is at work all day long, what would you do to make sure that your kids were taken care of? You would get a nanny. You would get someone that would come in and take care of your kids. And that's a pretty big process. That's someone coming into your house, looking after your kids, spending time in your personal space, and making sure that things were well put together and that they were someone who was a mentor that's disciplining them in the right way. Within that whole entire process, I think that getting involved with a sports performance coach is that same exact interview type process.
Would have to be, yeah.
You have to. I think it's something that's super important because you're really putting someone in this person's life that's going to be a mentor to them, that's going to teach them about life, that's going to improve them as an athlete and an individual. And I think all those are super, super important. So one, I would say, the biggest one is, I think word of mouth is really heavy. I think that you need to consult with the people that are closest to you, the athletes you've been training with, the teammates you've been training with, and try to understand, hey, what are you guys doing? Is there anyone you're spending time with? I think that's one.
Yeah.
Two, back in the day, it used to be, hey, I'm just going to find any sports performance coach that's closest to me in a local area and spend time with them because it's convenient. It's convenient. I don't think it's about being convenient anymore. Kids will drive 90 minutes to 2 hours to go to a sports skill practice. They should also be able to do that from a sports performance practice. So all that's super important. Third, I would say something that's kind of blossomed over the last 5 years is social media. And if you're someone that's rising in your field, you more than likely have a social media platform.
Yeah.
If you have a social media platform and you're in a rising space, you're more than likely putting a ton of details into that. So for me, for example, within my social media space, I have everything I'm doing on a daily basis. I'm posting stories as to what are athletes actually going through. And then I have smaller tabs that break down developmental groups. I have a tab that says, here's what it looks like if you're training as a middle school athlete. Here's what you're training as a high school athlete. So I think that gives a really great end to an interview process that they're seeing it visually. Parents have to see it. If you're not going to see it on social media, find out where that person's working, go introduce yourself to that person, sit back and watch a session that they're doing with their kids. I think that'll give you a great idea. On the other side, when you're looking at red flags, you have to understand what is the objective or intent or the specialty of that individual. What is their training history? What sport did they grow up playing? What athlete is their target audience that they work with? So if someone is working with adults and they're local and they're close to you, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are training in a well and enlightening space for sports performance athletes. I think that's a totally different tie-in.
I see.
If your individual, even more so, is a middle school athlete, and this individual is training collegiate athletes, you're getting warmer, but you're not
still a little bit off.
You're still a little bit off. You're closer.
Gap there.
Developmental gap is still huge. College athletes doing way different things than any middle school or high school athlete. If you're collegiate and you're a high school athlete, I think you're getting warmer. But I think it's finding those really tight windows of what is that individual training? Have they had experience in there? And then obviously trying to see online, on a website, anywhere, like what is their resume? Again, if you're in a business in the field of this in sports, I think you have to give parents as much information as possible for them to visually see what you do. Your website needs to be very bright. It needs to have a lot of information, lots of details, pictures, videos, all the above. Your social media platform needs to look really, really well. And then if they can go out and see a session, have a conversation with that person, I think you can tell really quickly, one, what type of relationship do they have with the athletes? Two, what are they breaking down their groups? What does that look like? And then three, it gives you an idea. Hey, does this apply to my athlete? And is this something I can see them doing in the future? Give it a try, hop in there, and then be able to understand, now my athlete has worked with this person one time. What is the developmental plan for this? That's kind of number 4, right? So parents will understand, see a session and be like, all right, cool, here we go. They'll go through one session and be like, all right, great, let's go. Well, you have to understand the next steps. Anyone can train anyone one time, but it's what does your training look like for a season? Because when you branch into an athlete and training an athlete, you have to understand their age, their gender,
Yeah.
You have to understand what sport they play. You have to understand what developmental window they were in, and then what competitive level are they currently playing at that time. So there's these variables that fit into a bowl. I have to put all those variables in a bowl and then create a plan.
Yeah.
If I miss out on some big variables, there's some things that I'm compromising, and I'm putting the athlete not in the best position to be successful. So I have to make sure that I'm putting everything in that bowl, assessing it correctly, and then giving the parents a plan. Parents love a plan. They love to be able to see results in a short amount of time.
Sure, absolutely.
If I'm going to work for an athlete within 2 weeks, they're going to see a ton of improvement in 2 weeks. And that's off of neuromuscular change. They're seeing different patterns changing, different posture, mobility changing, footwork, awareness is changing. If they're an older athlete, they're seeing a little bit of a strength increase, a little more pop in their step, a little more power development. So parents really need to be able to make sure that the red flags are very minimal. And
is it stuff like, if I'm going to guarantee your kid's going to get better performance? I mean, that seems to me to be a red flag. Or if they're showing off, like if they want to name drop, are there, what I mean?
Here's
like,
who
I've
I've
trained,
worked with,
here's the 6 people, I can make your kid look like that. I'm assuming those are some of the red flags. If they're touting their brand more than they're touting the performance that, everyday, like athlete, to your point, rather than the process they're trying to tout. I'm assuming that would be a red flag. You got to get those.
Most definitely. The process is the initial. Like, you want to be able to give a developmental plan. Really, all the name dropping or anything should maybe happen like 5 months down the road, where you've gotten a good relationship with the parents and the kids, and you're in more conversations, and now they're asking more questions, and you're saying, well, in this instance, I did this with this person, but now this is how I'm filtering this information and bringing it back to your athlete to develop them, because in my mind, the pro mindset for them is way better.
Yeah. So tell us what you got going on. So we're spring going into summer. We're summer. What's going on with you this time?
Yeah. So transition sport. This is probably the most busy time for performance right now, just because all the kids are out of school and they're competing. If they're in like club ball, they're competing at higher levels. So they're going from like states to regionals to nationals. Okay. But overall, any athlete that is out of school, when summertime happens, like they all gravitate towards me. It's like,
I was going to say, are you busier now through the summer, or are you busier in the wintertime?
I am probably 4 times busier now in the summer than I am during school. So my business really runs in tune with school semesters. So I try to adapt my training to kids are in school. As soon as they get out of school, they're training with me from 3 to 8 o'clock. Helping them in season in their sport, or if they're out season in their sport, they get a little more time with me. Now that it's summer, all summer programs open up. So SDP1 is going to be throwing all summer programs for preteen athletes, for middle school athletes, for high school athletes. And then I split it and I do a girls' high school, then a co-ed high school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just because right now for girls soccer and any high school sport, they're jumping into that and they're getting ready for tryouts. So I try to brand that on their own by themselves to make it real specific. Girls soccer is huge in this area.
Yeah.
There's many schools that are competing together in this area, from a public sector to a private sector.
So the sports, I want to make sure we're kind of basic on this. So the types of athletes that you see, you're indifferent on if they're a track athlete, soccer athlete. Who do you see the most, or who do you generally, who goes to you? Which sports are, if there's a parent listening and they're like, my kid plays, pickleball, should they come see you? Right?
Yep. So over my 18 years of sports performance training, I've really trained every single athlete in every single sport of every single age.
Nice.
So yes. Yeah. Yes is the answer.
Yeah, yes is the answer.
Yes.
I've trained athletes that are 5 years old, 4 years old, and literally taught them how to be able to like skip and jog and run and cut.
That's funny.
And understand coordination and body awareness. So those are kind of the windows of opportunity we talked about before. Yeah. I've trained preteen athletes, middle school athletes, high school athletes, and then branched into all those professional sports. So football, baseball, soccer, tennis, all those particulars. So I've been really fortunate and blessed to understand pretty much everything. But every single sport has been really represented in my career.
Cool.
And,
so if we have a shot putter that's trying to figure out how to do performance, you would start working with a shot putter.
Because it comes back to functional movements. It comes back to the body mechanics. I'm so, as I've gotten into this over the years, I'm so fascinated with body mechanics and mechanics. I always love mechanical things to begin with, but to tie those two together, when I tie somebody onto a bike, not literally tie them onto a bike, but when we incorporate the body mechanics to the mechanics mechanical part of the bike, that's when the magic happens, right? That's when the body function, everything all of a sudden becomes more efficient and just flows through. So I'm fascinated with that type of stuff. So I'm sure we'll have you on again in the future. We could just talk for 2 days about body mechanics and functional fitness type
I
stuff.
just want to know, okay, so...
Can you coach me? I act like a 5-year-old. So
he does. He has a mentality of a 12-year-old. So in Rocky IV, when Ivan Drago was doing that kind of workout versus the old school log and doing pull-ups in the tundra, which one was better?
Yeah.
Which is a better performance?
Big debate.
Really?
Debate. Huge debate. Drago had an unfair advantage because we saw something that was in a needle that was dripping. And back then, all that stuff was kind of questionable. But I think now that performance enhancement and all those things kind of come into play, I think we knew what that was.
All right.
It wasn't an IV drip in water.
No, it was not.
It was something a little bit more than that.
And learning about the history of the 3-on, 1-off kind of build performance that we do in triathlon a lot, right? And a lot of sports do that. It's 3 weeks on, 1 week off, right? So we build up, we recover, we build up, recover. All the history of that all coming from the Eastern Bloc countries that needed, because they were doping so bad. It was they needed to come down a week, right? So it was 3 up, 1 down, 3 up, 1 down, and we saw the Eastern.
I just don't know if I was supposed to. It's better for me to pull a bag of rocks over a piece of wood, or should.
But when we find some of that stuff, it's absolutely hilarious when you start learning the history of it. It still works for us body wise. We still tend to do some of that, but we're breaking that mold of that old school structure of what it was because we saw it work. Well, it worked because they had the IV dripping in the background too. That's the other reason.
All right. Well, okay. So back to your business. Sorry.
But the fact is,
are you taking on clients?
It's Rocky 1.
It's Rocky 1.
That's a big point. Rocky
ended up
just get a side of meat. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Are you taking on clients now? If you are, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, definitely taking on clients. So if you have any athlete of any age of any sport, send them over. Good.
I'll come over.
Covered. I got you covered.
Let's talk.
The easiest way to be able to reach out to me and contact me is via website. So if you go on sdperformance1.com, there'll be a little contact button in the top right-hand corner. Click on that. Send me your info. I'll reach out to you. The second way is if you go on any social media platform. If you go on Instagram under SD Performance1, there'll be a link in there for all the summer programs. If you go on Twitter, SD Performance_1, same exact thing. There'll be links to kind of connect you into the right place.
Cool.
But I'll have a couple different camps. One will run all through June for 4 weeks. So every developmental category from preteen to middle school to high school, that will be a 4-week set. And then in July, again, it'll be another 4-week set through there. For someone who's lightly looking to get into it and understand what performance is, I also have speed camps. So one speed camp will happen. It'll be a 2-hour block that'll happen in June, middle of June. I'll have another one in July as well. Those are really cool because as they set into the speed camp and they start to understand different systematic ways of training and developmental training, that's when they start to piece themselves into group training, team training, and all the above.
Cool.
Nice. Great. And we'll have all those links in the show notes for YouTube and everything. We'll have all of that stuff in there. So,
perfect. I appreciate it.
Dude, we're so happy to have you on, Stacey. It's fantastic. It's this great conversation. We can go on for days and days and days.
Yeah.
There's so much to unravel and to peel back on this. So really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everybody for watching and listening. You check our YouTube channel. Give us give us some feedback. We love feedback. That's how we're improving. Thumbs up, 5 stars, whatever it takes. That helps get our the algorithms, helps pump us up, and gets this out to more and more people. So share this with friends and let everybody know. So thank you again, Kenny. It's been great, Stacey, and we'll catch you on the next one. All right.